Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Towns in deprived areas in England are to get a £1.6 billion funding boost, which has immediately been dubbed a Brexit bribe by Labour, who say Theresa May is trying to use the money to win support for her Brexit deal from opposition MPs in areas which strongly voted to leave the EU. The Communities Secretary James Brokenshire denies that and insists the money will have a transformative impact on areas that feel left behind. Our political editor Laura Koonsberg reports from Stainforth in South Yorkshire.
Just look at this, look at it, there's nothing. We've got nothing in this town. We've got this feeling that we're unimportant anymore. It's not a coal mine, it's just a dead town now.
Keith Alsop wants his home to feel like something to him again. Hatfield Main Pit shut for good 4 years ago. There's a plan for a heritage centre to create new work where it's gone, if there's the cash.
I'm not sure whether it's a pie crust promise that could be broken at any time once the vote's gone the way Theresa May wants it to go, if you like.
Why'd you say that?
History.
Down canal.
There will be 1.6 billion up for grabs in places like this in England, but spread over 7 years. And there's no question things are tight already. What was the library is now a centre for volunteers.
Well, I think generally speaking, all they worry about is major cities.
We're absolutely desperate for that kind of money. This is the only public building in Stainforth now. There used to be 7 or 8, but the government cutbacks have closed these places down.
There are plenty of questions too.
I think there's also a complete lack of detail there about exactly what's this for.
The Prime Minister's announced the cash in the hope of persuading Labour MPs to back her on Brexit. But businesses, some thriving here, don't want a sympathy vote.
Ultimately, if there's a pot of cash there, an economy like Doncaster will want to access that so we can do great things for our businesses and great things for our communities here. But the timing of that feels a little cynical today, and I think we'd be a little bit frustrated if we were still being defined by the challenge and the deprivation.
But maybe Brexit is a chance to reset the scales.
Doncaster voted strongly for Brexit because it feels left behind, there's no jobs, and people are feeling that everything's being spent in London and in the south, government money. People feel as though nobody cares, which leads to a feeling of bravado, where people put on a very hard front, and it hides a lack of confidence and a feeling that they're not worth anything. So for me and for our charity, it's very important to say this place has got a lot of heritage, there's a lot of pride here. The embers are still there and we want to stoke that.
Some Labour MPs have dismissed this promise of extra cash as an insult or even a bribe. Don't expect there to be a sudden rush of support for Theresa May's Brexit deal from them. But just as she is crying out for votes, so too some parts of the country are crying out for a fairer slice of the pie. But Brexit, like all politics, is about what can get done, not always the same as what seems right or fair. Laura Koonsberg, BBC News, Stainforth.
A government offer of £1.5 billion to help disadvantaged towns in England has been labelled a Brexit bribe by Labour. Theresa May said the fund would give more opportunities to poorer areas, but it appears targeted at the constituencies of Labour MPs who could support her Brexit deal. Our political correspondent Carl Dinnan reports.
Public money may be short in towns like Wigan, but there's a wealth of ideas on how more of it could be spent.
Adults and children's services.
It's jobs what they creating for young guns.
Some good road repairs.
NHS, your buses,
yeah,
public transport, trains. Anything to do with Wigan, everywhere's shutting down.
Yet the government money being offered to build a post-Brexit future in towns like this hasn't been universally welcomed by local MPs.
The government's offering lots of money that could be spent in your constituency. Isn't that a good thing?
Well, first of all, the sums of money that are on offer are incredibly small by comparison with the scale of the cuts that we've seen over the last 9 years. My own council has lost 134 million over the last 9 years, and we've got more cuts in the pipeline.
£106 billion over 7 years will be allocated across England using what's called a needs-based formula. There'll be 583 million for the north of England, 322 for the east and west Midlands, but the whole of the south east, south west and east of England get just 95 million. Another 600 million will then be available for direct bids, and funding for Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland is yet to be announced. The emphasis on Northern and Midland constituencies, where there was a strong Leave vote, has raised suspicions in Westminster that this is all just a bribe to win MPs' backing for the government's Brexit deal. Not so, says the local government secretary.
This funding is there come what may, so ensuring that our towns that have been feeling that they've not been touched in the same way as other parts of our country are able to invest in the things that will help make that difference.
But it won't make much difference, claim the MPs whose towns will be getting the money, some of whom are now quite cross about it, leaving the impression that if it is meant to be some kind of a bribe, then it isn't a very good one. Carl Dinnan, ITV News.
Now the government has unveiled a new pot of money to be spent on the struggling towns in England. Theresa May said the Stronger Towns Fund was aimed at areas that had missed out on prosperity. But Labour said the government was trying to bribe MPs into supporting its Brexit deal, and also said the fund should have been far larger. There were also grumbles from Conservative backbenchers who suspect the money is being targeted at Labour areas rather than their own. Our political editor Gary Gibbon has this report.
England's struggling towns are to be targeted with a £1.6 billion government fund. It's been branded a bribe by the Labour leadership, designed to win over Labour MPs thinking of backing Theresa May's Brexit deal. But it's money that will be spread over up to 7 years, and it seemed to drive some Labour MPs in the opposite direction.
There had been an expectation when the government said that they were going to do something very positive for our towns, that there would be this game changer that would enable us to get that infrastructure rebuilt and get those good jobs back after several decades.
You think it could actually drive some votes the other way?
I think it's been so badly handled, this whole episode, that it's possible that Theresa May has lost even more trust than she had before.
I think that actually what she's done is for the first time acknowledged that there are left behind communities, but then said, you know what, you may be left behind, but here's a couple of million and off you go. That isn't going to make up for what this government has savaged to my community.
The Prime Minister, visiting Salisbury today on the first anniversary of the Novichok attacks, had been hoping today's announcement of extra money might get a warmer response and dislodge a few dozen Labour MPs from the other side to help her deal through the Commons.
20 to 30 is a reasonable number. There are more than that considering it. I'm sure pressures will be put on them by the whips and others.
She'd be lucky if she got 15 Labour MPs walking through that division lobby with the deal that is currently on offer. And I suspect that number might even be a bit smaller following this announcement.
Meanwhile, on her own side, Theresa May is trying to win over the 118 Tory MPs who voted against her deal in January. The Attorney General, Geoffrey Cox, returns to Brussels tomorrow, trying to extract legal commitments which will allow him to change his legal opinion on whether the backstop is truly temporary. The pro-Brexit ERG group of MPs has meanwhile set up a council of lawyers who will judge whether his new legal position passes their tests. Today, the Daily Telegraph reported that Geoffrey Cox had dropped his demands for a hard limit or end date for the backstop. The Attorney General tweeted that was misunderstood fag ends dressed up as facts. Sources in the ERG say nothing less than a protocol confirming a route out of the backstop will satisfy the vast bulk of Tory MPs who follow their grouping. Though a few have signalled that their bar is a bit lower than that, and they're pretty much ready now to switch sides. Some people in the ERG are going to take a very tough line with whatever Geoffrey Cox comes back with.
Indeed.
You're going to bend a little bit more because you're just so terrified of a delay, you don't want to go there.
Precisely. Yeah, I mean, say, the date of the 29th of March is what I will work. All my votes will be driven by the determination that we honour that commitment.
Having voted against the deal first time round, you've been on a bit of a journey, but it's not a conversion.
No, it's certainly not a conversion, but an acceptance of reality.
The investment fund announcement for English towns landed badly with quite a few Tory MPs, concerned that the Prime Minister's team was targeting Labour areas and Commons Labour votes overlooking poorer wards in the Tory seats.
Our political editor Gary Gibbon reporting there.